All right, hey everyone. So today we're diving deep into a situation, a developing situation actually, that's kind of got the world's attention right now.
We're talking about the Marburg virus outbreak in Rwanda.
Yeah.
And to help us, break it all down, understand what this virus, IS, why it matters, we've got experts name with us.
It's great to be here.
So this is serious stuff we're talking, like a really serious virus.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a hemorrhagic fever virus, similar in some ways to Ebola.
Okay, so right off the bat, people are going to
Yeah,
be hearing that and thinking,
exactly.
uh-oh.
Yeah, and for good reason. It's a serious situation.
So Rwanda, this all kicked off pretty recently, right? Like this isn't something that's been...
Very recent, yeah, just in the last few days, actually.
Yeah, so give us a...
So the outbreak was officially declared on September 29th, 2024.
Just a few days ago at the time of this recording.
Just a few days ago, and tragically, they reported 6 deaths the very next day.
See, that's the thing, right? Because we hear Marburg, we hear Ebola, we
Right.
immediately go to worst case.
Absolutely. And it's understandable.
Yeah, correct.
When you see fatality rates that get reported, and I've seen, up to 88% even being reported, and
Yeah, that's scary.
it is a scary number, and it reflects, what happens in the worst case scenario without treatment.
Right.
But I think it's really important to emphasize that with good supportive care, the chances of survival are significantly higher. We have to understand those nuances. It's not always doom and gloom.
Right. And we're not saying that to downplay it, but...
Absolutely not. No, no, no. This is serious, and people need to understand.
Right. And this is a rapidly evolving situation.
Absolutely.
So at the time that we were recording this, the latest numbers are, subject to change.
By the time people are hearing this, yeah.
But as of right now, what are the latest figures? As of, September 30th, the day after they declared?
As of September 30th, the numbers are 26 confirmed cases and 8 fatalities.
Okay.
And that's, again, these numbers can change rapidly, but it gives us a snapshot of what we're dealing with.
Yeah. It gives us a sense of the scope and the scale.
Exactly.
And it's serious enough that we're here talking about it.
Absolutely, because even one case of a virus like Marburg is a serious public health concern.
Absolutely. Okay. So I think it's important now to kind of take a step back.
Right, break it down.
And I want to make sure that all of our listeners are with us.
Sure.
When we say Marburg, what are we actually talking about here? What is this virus, for those of us who need a refresher, break it down.
Okay, so Marburg is a hemorrhagic fever virus. And what that means is that it can cause bleeding,
Okay.
both internally, externally. It's a really nasty virus. It's similar in some ways to its more infamous cousin, Ebola. They both originate in fruit bats, and they spread through direct contact with bodily fluids of infected individuals or contaminated surfaces.
Okay, so it's spread through contact, not airborne.
Exactly. That's a key difference. It's not like the flu or COVID where it's just, in the air.
So you're not going to get it just by, somebody coughing on you.
Exactly. Exactly. It requires that direct contact.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. Now, you mentioned symptoms. I think you started to touch on them a little bit.
I did, yeah.
But I think it's important to, again, make those comparisons because
Yeah.
in our minds, you can't hear Marburg and not think about Ebola.
Exactly. They're in the same family of viruses. They present very similarly.
So give us, what are for people who aren't as familiar with hemorrhagic fevers?
Right. So symptoms often start with fever, muscle aches, headaches, kind of like you might expect with, even the flu.
Right, you might not think anything of it initially.
Exactly, exactly. And that's part of what makes it tricky. But then things can escalate pretty quickly. And we're talking severe diarrhea, vomiting, and in the worst cases, internal bleeding, which is...
And that's where that fatality rate...
Exactly. That's where those really high fatality rates come in. Because if you don't get treatment, if you don't get supportive care, that internal bleeding can be very, very difficult to manage.
Okay, so now you said it spread through contact, not airborne.
Mm-hmm.
That's a key difference from something like, a flu or a COVID.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why contact tracing and isolation becomes so important.
Which, thankfully, it sounds like Rwanda, they haven't wasted any time. They've hit the ground running on that.
Yeah, absolutely not. They've sprung into action, which is really,
Yeah.
encouraging to see.
So what have they been doing so far? They declared this on the 29th. It's now the 30th. They've got 26 confirmed cases. What are they actively doing to contain this?
So they've already started contact tracing, and they've been very proactive. They've identified over 300 individuals who may have had contact with infected individuals, and they're monitoring them very closely.
Okay, and that's key, right? Because you're not just waiting for people to get sick.
Exactly. You're trying to get ahead of it.
You're trying to, if they've been exposed, isolate them.
Isolate them, break the chain of transmission. That's the goal.
Okay, so that's one. That's contact tracing. They're isolating suspected cases.
Right.
What else are they doing?
There's a big push for public awareness, educating the public about Marburg, how it spreads, and most importantly, how to limit physical contact, because that's...
Right, because if you don't know, you don't know.
Exactly.
Right, so knowledge is power in this case.
Absolutely. Knowledge and awareness are key.
Okay, so now we know that Rwanda has had experience dealing with, infectious disease outbreaks before.
Unfortunately, yes, but they've also learned from those experiences.
They have, and, they were very successful in containing, the spread of COVID-19.
They were one of the countries that really, were lauded for their efforts with COVID.
So based on what they've done with COVID, what are we seeing now with Marburg?
Right. So we're seeing a lot of the same things that worked for them with COVID being implemented now.
Yep.
And it seems to be, effective so far, but it's early.
Sure.
But the contact tracing, the isolation, the public awareness campaigns, those are all things that they did very well with COVID. And they're applying those lessons now.
So what can other countries, or, even just, what are the takeaways here? What systems need to be in place for a country or a region to effectively respond to something like this?
That's a great question, and I think Rwanda really highlights this. It's having a strong public health infrastructure in place,
Right.
even in countries we might not immediately think of.
Right.
They had the systems in place, they had the training, they had the resources because they had invested in public health. And that's a lesson for all of us, really.
Right.
It's about preparedness and rapid response.
Absolutely. Because you can't wait until something like this happens to start building those systems.
Exactly. You have to be proactive and you have to be prepared.
And it sounds like they're getting some support as well, right? Because the World Health Organization, they're not facing this alone.
No, absolutely not. The World Health Organization is actively involved. They're working directly with Rwandan authorities to contain the outbreak. They're providing resources, they're providing expertise, and that kind of international cooperation is absolutely essential.
And that kind of makes you wonder, right? Like, because you mentioned, they're getting help from the World Health Organization since it's in Rwanda.
Right.
But it does kind of make you step back and think,
It does.
how concerned should we be
No.
on a global scale?
That's a great question, and it's one that a lot of people are asking right now, and I think it's important to keep it in perspective while not downplaying the severity.
Right. We're not saying don't worry about it.
No, not at all. But we also don't want to cause unnecessary panic.
Right. Right.
So it's important to remember that Marburg is not new. This isn't the first time we've seen this virus, and it's unlikely to be the last.
Right.
The first identified cases were actually back in 1967.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this has been around.
It has been around. The first cases were in Germany and Serbia.
Okay.
And believe it or not, they originated from lab monkeys.
Lab monkeys. Really?
Lab monkeys, yeah. It just highlights how these viruses can jump from animals to humans.
That's both fascinating and a little bit unsettling at the same time.
It is. It really underscores the interconnectedness of, the animal kingdom and human health.
Absolutely.
And speaking of outbreaks, it's interesting to note that Rwanda is also dealing with a smaller outbreak of mpox right now.
Mpox? That's still a thing.
It's still a thing. It's not getting as much attention,
No.
but it's part of a larger outbreak that's happening in Africa.
It's just a stark reminder that, we've been talking about Marburg, but it's just one of many.
One of many. Infectious diseases are a constant concern, and this is why public health is so important.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
What are the key takeaways here? If there's somebody listening to this and they're thinking, okay,
Right.
what does this mean for me? What should I be doing? What's the takeaway?
I think the biggest takeaway is stay informed, don't stick your head in the sand, but also don't panic.
Right.
Seek out reputable sources of information. The World Health Organization, the CDC, they're your best bet for getting accurate information.
Stay away from those.
Stay away from the clickbait headlines and the fear-mongering.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And remember, just like with Ebola, there's no magic bullet cure for Marburg. There's no vaccine yet.
Right.
So the focus is really on managing the symptoms, preventing further spread.
So it's really about, at this point, containment.
At this point, absolutely. Containment is key.
And making sure that people are aware so that they can take those necessary precautions.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so to sum up, I think, it's important to say this is a serious threat.
It is.
Marburg virus is a serious threat, But Rwanda is taking swift action. They're doing what they need to do,
They are.
and the global health community has their back.
They do, and I think this situation really underscores a critical point, which is that we are all interconnected. What happens in one part of the world can affect us all, and outbreaks like this highlight how crucial global cooperation and a robust public health infrastructure are, not just for one nation, but for the entire world.
It's a good thing to leave people with,
Mm.
right? Because it really does. It makes you think.
It
It
does.
makes you think about, what are we doing as individuals, but also as a global community to prepare for these types of threats?
Absolutely.
Because this isn't going to be the last one.
It's not, unfortunately.
So, on that note, we'll leave you with this. How can we, as individuals and a global community, better prepare for and respond to these kinds of health threats in an increasingly interconnected world? Until next time, stay curious.